Welcome back, everyone. We have a truly special explainer lined up for you today. We're going to be unpacking an incredible transformative journey. It's an analysis of a life that was completely deconstructed and then rebuilt literally from the earth up. It's called The Heart in the Mud House. I am so incredibly excited to guide you through this today because it touches on something just so deeply human, That search for genuine inner peace when our modern world becomes, well, just a little too loud. Okay, let's dive right into this.
So, be honest with yourself for a second. Have you ever thought about leaving everything behind and running to the jungle? For anyone who has ever felt that absolute crushing weight of urban burnout, the endless emails, the constant pings and notifications, this thought has probably crossed your mind at least once, right? Well, it definitely crossed the mind of our subject today, a man named Raghav.
So, picture this. Raghav is 38 years old, and he has what society calls it all. His outer wealth was undeniable. He had a high-paying job as a creative head at a massive ad agency in Mumbai, a big flat, money, prestige, the whole shebang. But beneath that, his inner reality was suffocating. It's 2 a.m., he's staring into the harsh glare of his laptop, and his chest is just filled with this terrifying emptiness. His doctor diagnosed him with severe anxiety. His wife basically chalked it up to a midlife crisis. He literally had an 80-year-old's exhaustion in a 38-year-old's eyes. The pressure was building, moving faster and faster, until snap.
Let's walk through this breaking point because it all happened so fast. The pressure cooker finally exploded. Raghav suffered a massive panic attack right in the middle of a corporate meeting. He ran out, threw up in the washroom, and that very same day, actually within hours, he emailed his resignation. His wife, who was utterly disconnected from him by this point, sent over divorce papers. His friends thought he'd lost his mind. But Raghav? He just sold his flat, packed a bag with 2 kurtas, a diary, and his grandfather's Bhagavad Gita, and he just left. For the next 3 months, he wandered, completely desperate to get away from the crowd.
Section 1. The Jungle's Call. Finding a mentor in the Satpura Wilderness.
After 3 months of aimless wandering, Raghav's journey brought him to the deep, quiet Satpura Wilderness in Madhya Pradesh, right near a small village called Banjaria. And it was here, at the edge of the wild, that he met a village elder named Budhia Kaka. When Raghav asked for a place to stay, Budhia kind of laughed at the city boy and gave him this profound warning. He said, "The jungle gives space to those who know how to give, not just take." That's a striking contrast, isn't it? Raghav came from a corporate world built entirely on transactional taking, and Budhia was basically telling him, look, the wilderness only accepts you through reciprocal giving.
Section 2. Building Sans. The Architecture of Patience.
Budhia took Raghav about 2 kilometers into the jungle, to a quiet little hillock surrounded by teak and bamboo trees, with a thin river called Reva flowing right below it. The silence there was so pure you could hear your own heartbeat. This is where Raghav decided to build his new life, literally from the ground up. But, as we know, nature does not care about your corporate titles. Raghav initially tried to build a mud house using a tutorial he saw on YouTube, and predictably, it completely collapsed in the very first rain. He wanted to quit, but Budhia stepped in. He didn't speak much, but he showed him the real, tactile process. First, you extract smooth clay from the pond. Then, you mix it with cow dung, neem leaves, and chaff. And finally, you knead it for hours with your bare feet. The village women laughed, calling it the city guy's mud dance. But Raghav was finally grounding himself, connecting his skin to the earth.
Now, the really crucial number to remember here is 2. 2 feet. That is exactly how thick Raghav built the walls of his circular mud house. And this wasn't just for looks, it is brilliant natural science. Walls that are 2 feet thick organically regulate temperature. They keep the interior beautifully cool during those scorching Indian summers and nice and warm during the cold winters. It's architecture that works with nature, not against it.
It took Raghav 6 grueling months to finish this house. On the day he finished the final smearing of the walls, he just sat down and wept. He cried for the very first time in years. Leaning against that wall, he felt as though the earth was actually hugging him back. He decided to name his home Sans, which means breath. He chose that name because unlike a dead, rigid concrete box, a mud house actually breathes.
Section 3. New Bond with Nature. Finding the Ultimate Family.
Loneliness was probably Raghav's biggest enemy out there on that hillock at first. But as he settled in, he built the most diverse, beautiful family you could imagine. He integrated perfectly into the ecosystem. He found an orphaned fawn whose mother had fallen prey to a leopard. He raised her on goat milk and named her Kajal. He formed this deeply spiritual bond with the river, calling it Mother Rewa, where he'd wash away his fears every single morning. He even nursed an injured owl back to health after a brutal storm. And get this,
The owl returned to his window every full moon, and he gave back to the community too. He taught the village children their ABCs on a mud mat outside his home, and in return the villagers brought him roots and millet. It was just perfect harmony.
But, as is the way of the world, this peace couldn't remain entirely uninterrupted. Fast forward 2 years. Raghav's skin had tanned to copper, his beard had grown out, and that exhaustion had entirely vanished from his eyes. But then, a convoy of builders, politicians, and police suddenly arrived in the village. A national highway was slated to be built right through his hillock. His sanctuary was technically on government land, and his mud house was going to be bulldozed.
Section 4. Balance, Development, and Nature. The Clash of Worlds.
This was a really complex clash. You have the unstoppable march of necessary governmental infrastructure coming right up against the preservation of a fragile ecosystem. The villagers were absolutely terrified, but this is where we see Raghav's growth. Instead of running away like he did in Mumbai or fighting aggressively, he evolved. He shifted from escaping society to educating it. Wearing his mud-stained kurta, he walked straight into the district collector's office. He didn't just oppose the highway. He acknowledged the development is necessary, but he proposed a constructive compromise. Preserve the hillock as an ecotourism spot to teach future generations how humans can live with nature instead of bulldozing over it.
And guys, here is the absolute wildest twist in the story. The district collector sitting across the desk, it was Raghav's former AdWorld client from 5 years ago. The collector listened to him, smiled, and said, "You've changed, Raghav. You used to give logic, now you tell stories." I mean, what a testament to how profoundly Raghav's soul and his entire way of communicating with the world had transformed. And you know what? The collector agreed to the proposal.
Section 5. The Mud House Within. A Sanctuary for the Soul.
So, Sands didn't get bulldozed. In fact, it evolved from being just Raghav's personal refuge into a sanctuary for others. Raghav started running an eco school, and he teaches his students a really stark comparison between a mud house and a concrete one. He explains that a mud house is actually a living entity. It expands and contracts, it breathes with the changing seasons, and it yields to love and patience. A concrete house, on the other hand, is dead and static. It's built on rigid force, and it suffocates you without artificial AC. He wasn't just teaching them about architecture here, he was using it as a metaphor for how to structure their own minds. To cure the exact same urban burnout he once suffered from, Raghava implemented a strict healing regimen. Stressed out city dwellers come to Seance for a 7-day stay, and the rules are intense. 0 mobile phones, absolutely no television. Their daily tasks consist purely of tactile, grounding work, smearing mud on the walls, sowing seeds in the earth, and at night, just stargazing. It is a complete and total reset for the human nervous system.
As time moved forward, life just beautifully continued its natural cycle. The wise Buddha Kaka eventually passed away, but Raghav honored him by planting a massive peepal tree right there on the hillock. Kajal, the orphaned fawn, grew up and actually brings her own 2 fawns to the courtyard every evening now. And incredibly, 3 years after their divorce, his ex-wife came to visit. She didn't even come inside. She just stood at the gate, watched him in his element, smiled, and said, "You found your home, Raghav. I am happy."
And it all comes back to this one absolutely crucial lesson that Buddha Kaka taught him early on. Mud doesn't yield to anger, it yields to love. That isn't just a tip for building a house. It is the blueprint for rebuilding yourself. You literally cannot force inner peace. You can't aggressively conquer your anxiety. You have to approach yourself with patience, with acceptance, and with love.
So, I want to leave you with this final provocative question. When the external noise finally stops, can you hear your inner voice? Raghav's journey teaches us that there is a mud house waiting to be built inside every single one of us. It's not made of bricks or cement, but of patience, acceptance, and a deep connection to something larger than ourselves. Sometimes willingly letting go of the life you planned is the very first step to finding the life you were meant to live. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. Take a moment today to just listen to the silence.